let's talk about the Sony 50mm 1.2 G Master. I'll be coming at this review from the perspective of a photographer and a videographer who mainly shoots portraits and also cinematic vlogs. I've only spent like a week with this lens. Ideally, I would like to spend more time with it, but I only got this lens for a wedding this weekend, which fell through, unfortunately. So take this review or this impressions video as you will. I mainly shot this lens with the A7R III, just to get a little bit more pixel peeping action. And I have to say that for the most part, this lens has got it all. The 50mm focal length is one of my favorite, actually it probably is my favorite focal length. And this lens is such a dream. This thing's pretty much got all the features. It's got the autofocus tracking, it tacks on pretty well. It's got programmable buttons and switches here, the AF, MF switch, as well as a declickable aperture ring. And the aperture ring is pretty smooth, although I did keep it on automatic for most of the time and just controlled it within the camera. I found the images to be very sharp, even wide open at f1.2. And you can expect even sharper images once you close the aperture down to 2.8, f4. When it came to photography and shooting pictures, I found that I was able to get the eye of not only my animal subjects, but also my people subjects. And because this is an f1.2 lens, although you don't have to open up the aperture all the way with all the lenses that you have, I still found myself shooting at f1.2. And I was not disappointed at the image results. I mean, how often do you just get to have the chance to just obliterate the background? I mean, you could do it with AI. When it comes to running and gunning, for video, I would definitely rely on the autofocus. Personally, I just want to take a little bit more control with manual focus. And the racking of the manual focus is pretty consistent. Whereas on other lenses like the Sony 55mm 1.8 by Carl Zeiss, I enjoy that lens. It's great, flies was awesome, image quality, then the manual focusing would be erratic. But here, it's smooth all the way around, it's consistent no matter how fast you spin this focus ring. Other things about this lens is the lens hood. This thing is pretty solid. It reminds me of one of those bigger lenses like a Sony 70 to 200mm f4 version. I'm sure the f2 version is not any different. But yeah, it's even got a locking mechanism just for this. So it's nice and secure. Out of all the lenses that I've ever tried, the 50mm f1.2 is my favorite. And my favorite version of this from any camera brand that I've tried is the Canon 50mm f1.2. Compared to this, it's a lot smaller when it comes to form factor, which makes it a lot easier for me to bring it around. So on my right hand, I got the Sony 85mm f1.2 by Sony, and then here's the 50mm f1.2 by Sony. This thing's got more mass, it's got more surface area, this thing is huge as compared to this. Now I'm so used to carrying something like this when I was using Canon, the 50mm f1.2. Can't always have it all, but I mean, if they were able to make a second rendition of this and make it in this form factor, or at least even like a little bit wider, but with less protrusion, I'd definitely take it. And in comparison, here's my Sony 24mm to 105mm zoom lens f4, and ooh, I mean, this one feels about the same. So I guess I really can't complain. Sometimes I think about going back to Canon just so I could use that Canon 50mm 1.2. I mean, I could adapt. I find that this is the best lens for anybody to have in their pocket. If weight is a consideration, you probably might want to look at the Sony 55mm 1.8 by Carl Zeiss. If getting that 1.2 or getting that 1.4 isn't a necessity, isn't part of your work, definitely pass on this. But if you have the opportunity to rent this lens, and if you want to take it out for a weekend, shoot your significant other, family, someone wants to pay you, by all means, let them rent this lens for you, because this thing is $2,000. I was able to find it used for about $1,700, but still, this lens is dreamy, not only through the images that it produces, but also dreamy because maybe this is not reality that I have this lens. You definitely need your permission slip signed to get this lens, because, you know, happy life, happy wife, right? If you want to see a dedicated video sample that I shot with this lens, I'll leave the link over here. If you want to see photo samples that I shot with this lens, I'll leave that link to my Instagram down below. I'm Mike, reminding you to add life to what matters, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.